Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Bootstrap Your Business to Success. My name is Michelle Eisenberg, and I am a program assistant at the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center. And for those of you who may not know, the NASDAQ Center is a nonprofit building a better path for entrepreneurs worldwide by improving inclusion, access, and knowledge in entrepreneurship. And so, as you will see in the chat in a moment, the NASDAQ Center provides programs, resources, and exceptional mentorship to entrepreneurs across all races, industries, and geographies. So definitely make sure to check out those links and resources in the chat. And then just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. First, let us know where you are dialing in from in the chat. We always love to connect. And second, we're going to open up for live Q&A at the end of the event. So please make sure to submit your questions for us in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen throughout the presentation, and we will try our best to get to all of them. And of course, none of what we do could be possible at the center without all of the amazing support from our sponsors, including NASDAQ, Lehigh University, Bank of the West, Airbnb, KPMG, Wilson Sonsini, Woodruff Sawyer, Microsoft Entrepreneurship for Positive Impact, BPM, and HubSpot for Startups. We are humbled by their contributions and hope you are grateful too. And so before we get started, we always like to launch a couple polls to see how everyone in the room is doing. So this first one's going to ask, how are you feeling? Fearful, anxious, surviving, or optimistic? And I'll give it a few moments for everyone to submit a response here. Awesome. Arizona, Texas, Toronto, UK, Florida, South Carolina, Netherlands, California, New Jersey, New York, Luxembourg, Germany, West Virginia. Welcome, welcome, everyone. So great to see people from all across the globe. All right, I'm going to end this poll and share these results. Awesome. Looks like optimism's in the lead, but we definitely have some feelings of surviving, anxiety, and fear. So hopefully some of our conversation today will help address some of those feelings. And I'm going to stop sharing this poll and launch the second poll, which is going to ask, what is keeping you up at night? Finance, sales, marketing, scale, pivot, team, or surviving? And this one just tells us a little bit more about your current entrepreneurial needs so we can keep providing relevant content. Thank you, as always, for participating. I'll give it just another moment. All right, I'm going to end this poll and share these results. Finance and sales tied for first. We got some needs all across the board, though. So thank you for participating. We will take this into account. I'm going to stop sharing this poll. And without any further delay, please join me in giving a warm welcome to our special guest, Emma Joy Obanye, CEO of One Tech. Emma, it is such a pleasure to have you here, and I'm going to pass it right over to you.
Can you see me? There we go.
Yeah, there you are. All righty.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Michelle, and welcome everyone. Welcome to this presentation on Bootstrap Your Business to Success. My name is Emma Obanye, and I, just like most of you on here, I'm an entrepreneur as well. I've been in the entrepreneurship game for far too long. I'm currently CEO of One Tech, which is a not-for-profit based out of the UK that supports underserved founders, or connects underserved founders rather, to opportunities in tech startups. So everything from sort of, programs, events, all the way through to sort of connecting with investors and various different funding opportunities. That's something we do. We are predominantly focused on the UK market, but we are looking at ways that we can extend that into other locales. Second of all, I'm a serial founder and failure. I think it's important to note because I don't think you get anywhere without failure. And knowing that failure is your friend, it is the path to success. And third of all, I have had one exit along the way. One back in 2016, not a massive exit, but it was an exit nonetheless. And like I said, too many failures to count, which I'm going to keep on stressing throughout this presentation.
Hey, Emma, just real quick, it looks like we're not seeing your screen. Can you try maybe sharing it one more time?
Okay. Let me see what happened. Did it just stop now or?
It just says you're sharing the screen, but nothing's actually coming up.
Okay, let's try that again. Apologies, everyone. Your screen sharing is paused, it says on my end. Okay, I think I know what it is. Hold on, let me do that again. Okay, let's try that again. Screen sharing is paused. Okay, do you know what? I'm gonna try one more time.
Awesome. Thanks.
It's always, there's no presentation without
this is the part of the beauty of the virtual life we are all living nowadays.
100%. So, okay, let's see now. If I do share screen again. Okay.
Perfect.
Yay. Okay. Apologies, everyone. And I was about to say I've been working in tech for the past 18 years. You wouldn't know, would you? Okay, so there we go. Right. So as I've said, all of those things, there's a lot more facets to me, but I think for the sake of this presentation, those are probably the important ones to know. So let's go to the agenda. Sorry. Right, so in terms of the agenda, I'm going to go over, or cover 3 main things today. I'm going to first start with a bit of an intro into the importance of bootstrapping in 2023. I'll then go through some practical steps to apply to your bootstrap business. I'm assuming that quite a few of you have got bootstrap businesses or are hoping to build bootstrap businesses. I would love it as well if in the chat, maybe you could introduce your business just as almost like an elevator pitch or just a little a tweet sized introduction to your business, just to get to know each other, and also for me to understand where you all are and maybe your stage as well. So if you're at the early stages of building and launching a product versus sort of like early customers or traction, product market fit and scale, that will help as well. And then just going back to the agenda, so practical steps to apply to your bootstrap business. And then finally, I'm just going to go through a few tips and tools that will support you, and mainly the things that I am going to mention along the way. Okay, hopefully that sounds good to all of you. Right, so a little bit of an introduction. So I'm going to start with the basics, right? What is bootstrapping? I think it's one of those terms that if you're in the know, you're in the know, but if you're not, you're not. But I think the fact that most of you are here probably means that you do want to know what it is, but just for the sake of a few people that may not know what that term means, I'm just going to go over that very, very quickly. So bootstrapping is a term that has existed for, I think, over 100 years. And I think typically was used during the phrase like, when someone pulls themselves up by their own bootstraps. Essentially, it means it's in the context of business, in the context of entrepreneurship, it's the challenge of making something out of nothing. So it's a bootstrap company is one that has started and expanded only through the entrepreneur's personal resources and the revenue that have been generated by the company. Okay. So now, why learning to bootstrap is a must in 2023? I think a lot of you will understand and probably share this sentiment, but money is kind of expensive at the moment. I know that interest rates have come down in the US quite a bit, but in the UK, they're at their highest rate in the last 15 years. So essentially, that means that if you were to seek other types of funding, such as a loan, your business would be needing to make quite a sizable return in order for you to make that feasible, right? To be able to pay off the interest as well as having a little bit of money for the business to retain. So that's the biggest reason why you should consider bootstrapping, because I think we're in a phase in the world, and this is a global issue, whereby, you know, due to lots of different reasons, the war in Ukraine, due to, you know, coming out post-COVID, and just due to, you know, other things that have just created like this economic shock that is affecting everyone, right? It's affecting individuals on a personal level, but it's also affecting companies. So hopefully some of the tips that we go through today will support that. Second of all, again, thinking about the state of the world right now, you're in competition with the world. So if you are looking to seek investment, you know, we were always in competition with the world, because a lot of funds are global now, right? So if there's another person who's solving a similar problem to you, they're probably being sought out by a particular fund if that's an area of interest, right? So you're in competition in the world with the world. The thing that's changed is probably the fact that investment, especially VC investment, has become even more scarce. So this is a very good reason to start thinking about what are the other opportunities that are out there, and is bootstrapping one of those opportunities that I want to kind of go full throttle with. So again, just reinforcing that point, investment-wise, it's slower. So the pace of raising investment is taking a little bit longer. People are getting lower valuations, and there are more bridge rounds as a result. And actually, I was talking to a good friend of mine who happened to raise money pre-2022. So when, you know, I think 2022 was probably the peak in when it comes to VC investment. I think it was the point in which there were more investments being made globally, more rounds, sizable rounds, higher valuation than ever before, that kind of thing. And if you had raised at that point, you probably would have had a very high valuation, probably one that wasn't in line with where things were. And then so coming into this year, if you are taking another round, so post-seed, I'm talking about mainly sort of affecting Series A, Series B, what you're finding is that even if your business is doing what it said it was going to do, the valuation is probably going to be lower, and that doesn't bode well, right? Having a lower valuation means that you know, that's kind of, there's more expectation, there's more that you've got to do in order to get to a point where, you know, people are looking at your business as in an upward trend. And so a lot of more bridge rounds are being taken just to kind of bridge that gap, essentially, and to be able to support people as they try to hit some of those targets they've got with their investors. 3, I've kind of touched on this already, just the economic shock. So obviously what's happened is the ripple effect of that is that investors are supporting their portfolio companies, or looking at, actually, can we support these portfolio companies, not just through investment, but also through other resources, through their networks and things like that, and actually helping those businesses to refocus on business fundamentals. So again, if what you're building isn't cutting edge, I would advise you to do the same. So if you are building, you know, I don't know, an e-commerce store, or something that in which you're serving a market that in which there are lots of other competitors, or whereby, you know, maybe you are doing some AI stuff, but there's like, wow, there's loads of competitors coming out left, right, and center. I would say look at other alternatives, look at ways in which you're not going to waste your time, and then look at ways that you might be able to bootstrap, or look at other sources of funding. Now, this isn't true of everyone, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail, but it's just some food for thought. 4th thing, a bit more positive now, is AI, right? So the barrier to entry, the positive is that the barrier to entry is way lower to start a business. But obviously on the flip side means that it's probably going to be higher to raise, because the bar from an innovation standpoint has gone up, and there are more companies that are doing, you know, even applying AI to what they're doing. Building an AI product has become a lot more easier, especially with things like OpenAI, and being able to access all of these tools and resources. It just becomes easier. But then obviously going to the positives is that it's a lot easier as entrepreneurs to actually build out startups, right? To start up. So things like ChatGPT and other tools can act as your CMO, act as your CTO for a fraction, for sometimes, you know, in some cases free. But if you want full access at any point in time, then, you know, roughly $20 a month. So a great example is things like Canva. Now, every tool, whether it's a landing page tool or a website tool, is giving you these AI services for free. So extensions to their business models that allow you to build copywriting, build out copywriting for your website, or build out social copywriting and all these kind of things that are added values and a big part of launching a business are all coming in for free or next to nothing every month. And then the fifth one, which is a much more positive tact on this, is that the skills that you learn from entrepreneurship in general, but from bootstrapping, are some of the most sought after skills in the world. Like when I got into entrepreneurship, it was always something that I had in the back of my mind. Look, if this fails, I've got skills that will allow me to get a higher level job later on, because I would have accumulated a load of different skills, an array of skills. And it's funny because it is true. When you look at the top 10 skills for 2025 by the World Economic Forum, they fall into 4 buckets. They fall into problem solving, they fall into self-management, they fall into working with people and use of technology. All of these 10 skills are entrepreneurial skills. They're skills that you'll gain from the journey that you're on, as well as skills that will be accelerated really by bootstrapping, right? By having less money to play with, less time, you will accumulate these skills. So anyway, so those are the reasons why bootstrapping 2023 is probably a good thing to kind of look into. And now I'm going to move on to the second part of this presentation, which is around the steps, right? And what I've done is I've grouped these steps into 2 main buckets. So people that are launching or in that moment where they're about to launch, and people that have already got some early customers and are looking to grow. So hopefully you'll gain some value from this. The other thing that I want to mention here is that I am obsessive about entrepreneurship and bootstrapping in general. And so through my work with One Tech and just off the back of just being involved in an organization like that, I've done a lot of mentoring of founders and supporting founders. I've run program sessions and you name it, I've done it. I've probably mentored in excess of 500 founders, or had meetings with 500 or so founders. And so through that and through some of the other work that I've been doing around writing a book on bootstrapping, I've had to also interview lots of different founders. So this is where all these steps come from. I've kind of gathered them into those 2 main areas based on where those founders kind of fit, but also I've included the steps that I think are most important along this process. So without further ado, let's start with go-to-market. So how many of you are actually, launching a product? Let me just have a look at the chat, because I did ask a few people that question. Okay, so it looks like there's a few early stage people I can see here. Someone building AR. Lots of different, I'm seeing lots of different types of businesses here as well. But quite a few of you are bootstrapped. Some of you are a little bit later stage, but I think some of the tips that I'm going to be going through will be relevant for all of you, which is good to see. Okay, fantastic. Right. So go to market first of all. So with, this is a tip that I think, and a step that I think goes without saying. Now, I'm not saying that if you haven't followed this path, it isn't the right thing to do. It's always, everyone's different, but I found, at least from my experience for sure, that it's something that has helped. So the first point is around finding a passion space and a community. So 1 second, sorry, let me just move this screen. Okay, close the chat. Okay, there we go. So find a passion space and a community. So obviously it's easier if you're catering for a community that you're in, right? And the reason for that is that it's a lot easier to research, it's a lot easier to speak to. And on those dark days, when it does get really difficult, it's easier to get out of bed at night. So my first business, or my first sort of business that I raised money for, Buddy Bounce, I launched that, we started in 2010, and it was off the back of a hackathon. And that hackathon was amazing for us, right? It was like a weekend thing. We ended up winning a prize, and we realized that everybody we spoke to about this idea just fell in love with it. They thought it was an amazing idea. And what we found was that we kept getting introduced to different people. So opportunities were kept being spawned off the back of us talking about the idea. And that made it a lot easier to do. However, when it came to having done that 6 years in, I think both me and my co-founder felt that, you know, things were tricky, things were tough, we're going back out to raise again, that kind of thing. And we realized that the initial idea had evolved into one that we were not so passionate about anymore. So the problem we were essentially solving, Buddy Bounce was a loyalty platform for fans of musicians. But the niche, or the sort of audience that we had kind of spotted a gap, or at least that we'd got a lot of traction in, was for like young fans of like pop artists, right? And that was me maybe like, you know, 25 years ago, but it wasn't me at that time. And it just meant that, yeah, it was just like, we were no longer in love with it. And so when I moved on to my second startup, which was Mindful Team, I focused on a problem that I was having at that point in time, which was essentially around my team. It was essentially around how can I gather statistics and data from them and combine it with my retrospectives that would give me a bit of a feel for how they were feeling, the mood, what they needed. So essentially what you see a lot in the market now, just around analytics around the team. So we started building out this product, and the presentation you see in front of you, or the slide you see in front of you, is actually from a presentation I do on my product failures. It's a different presentation. So what we found was that by doing this, it was a space that I was in. It was a space we were catering for, a market that I had previously had a job in. It was a lot easier to research, a lot easier to speak to. And it meant that we were able to tap into that community. I had the same problem as them, and it was a lot easier to start. So that's why I say it's a lot easier if you are part of that community. Again, speaking is when we talk about speak to, we're in the era of personal brand, right? So if you're not posting about the area of the space that you're in, how are people going to know about it? It's much more authentic if you do that. It's a lot easier if it's something, again, a problem that or an area that you could become a thought leader in. So that's why I say it's a lot easier to speak to on that as well. Second of all is to find a problem that needs to be solved for that said community, rather than focusing on the solution that you're going to build, right? So if you focus on the problem, again, it's a lot easier for you to be able to find lots of, and not necessarily be too focused on a particular solution. So this is an example of, again, going back to my product Mindful Team back in 2017, there was a report called the Annual Retrospective Report. And I went in here, and it was so much easier for me to find a problem that I related to. I looked through the list of challenges that people had when facing and running their retrospectives. And even though there were loads of them here, the one that I honed into was the one that had 23% or 20% at the bottom here. And it's a lot easier when you understand the problem for you to actually really link that to a solution. So in this example with Mindful Team, we'd already built this product out, but we needed a way to attract these people that was a lot sexier than the tool that we built out. So we decided to build a lead magnet, which I'm going to go on to in a minute. And that lead magnet was essentially like a card game that could be used with Scrum Masters, people that were running retrospectives and these team reflections. So what we did was I honed in on those 2 points here, knowing, because I knew so much about the people that were running this, because I used to do it myself, I was able to hone in that actually, even though this was listed as one of the lower problems that was being faced, I knew it would be something that the people that were running retros would be really on top of, because most people that run things like retrospectives want them to be fun. They want the team that they're running them with, they're essentially facilitators of these kind of workshops. They want them to be fun. So actually, by honing in on that, I was able to speak to, in some ways, the fear or the big challenge that the retrospective owner had. Not everybody else in the room, but the retrospective facilitator. And by doing that, I was able to build out a product that made sense just by knowing, again, more about that community, more about that audience. So the third thing, just speaking again to the point I made before, was actually building out something very small, something small that I can test with. So I have in the past been really, really fixated on building out. The product needs to be perfect. I come from a product background. So I've always had this need to like build out, fully featured product, something that's perfect that can go out. And really, it's a myth. The myth is that, that you're going to put something out there and people are going to love it straight away. You really need to build with the community. So again, being part of that community will help you because you need to bring people on a journey with you. So creating what I call a magnetic minimum viable product, which is essentially a lead magnet, really aids that. It will allow you to get something out into the market in a couple of weeks. Test, make sure that it's the right thing, and then move from there. So the very first thing that you want to do as a founder is to make sure that you can attract your target customer. Make sure that your assumptions about who they are the right ones. Make sure that what you're building is in line with what they want. And of course, if you're building a big fancy tech product, just think about what knowledge do you have that's related to the knowledge that your audience are seeking, that you could package up as an ebook, as a game, as just something very, very simple that you can put out there with your audience, right? So in this instance, what we did, of course, my product was actually Mindful Team. My product was a tech platform. But the first thing that I put out there was to meet them where they were at that point in time, which was just a simple game that they could use in their retrospectives. And then the idea was that once they downloaded this game or bought the game, because it ended up being a game once we realized that people would pay for it, then what we could do is within the pack, give them and introduce them to the main platform and by giving them a free trial for a couple of months, which obviously looks like a win. So in this instance, what we did was we created a landing page to a free version of the game. We A/B tested that landing page and every journey within it to death. And what we found was we were able to bring people into our funnel for very, very cheap because we were giving them something for free. The other thing that we realized was that actually we could break even on our marketing spend by actually allowing them to buy the game. So this might be a concept I'm not sure that many people are familiar with, but actually you can reduce your marketing spend. So rather than spending lots of money to bring people to a platform, you can minimize that by actually having them buy this e-product or ebook or whatever it is. Because again, you can then take them on a journey if it makes sense to that key thing later on. So again, if you are on the early stages of your journey, I cannot say enough. You want to put something out there really, really quickly, get that feedback and continuously improve, continue to test, etc. Fourth point, which is a point that I see a lot of founders dismiss, which is that before you even go live with something, map the potential economics of your solution, right? Don't just assume that people will come. It's very easy for us to get into our heads and think that, I'm going to put something out there. I'm not even going to think about the economics of this solution and people are just going to buy it. It's better if before you even launch, you actually map out the economics of your solution. And the reason you can do this is because there's a lot of data that will help you map this out. So again, there are lots of tools. We know what's the average open rate. We know what the conversion rate from a landing page might be in a particular niche or a particular area of your business. So use all of those assumptions, map out the journey, use all of those assumptions and work out whether or not the economics make sense. If you do that at the early stages, it will help you so much later on, because you might see that there are some assumptions that you're making without you even going out there that are just so wrong. The amount of founders that I've come across, there's one particular founder that comes to mind who is building out he's building out a marketplace, and he had spent thousands of pounds on building out this tech and not realizing that actually, what he would make, the margin that he would make was basically the average spend that somebody would make on his platform would be probably about $10. And he was a marketplace. He wasn't receiving all of that revenue, right? That revenue was going to whoever's product that he was selling, he was taking a cut of that, which would probably result in $1. I mean, it costs at least $1 to get somebody on your site. So why would you build out a product and spend all that money without mapping out those assumptions? So this is like one of those like really big ones for me. Like, what are the assumptions around that journey that you're building out? How big is the niche that you're in? This was another one for retrospectives. When we were running Mindful Team, we realized that the retrospective niche, and that's why we had to expand out into just more generalized areas, but retrospectives, there were very few people or scrum masters or people that run retrospectives at that time. There were maybe about, I think, 30,000 in the world. If I'm selling a product to them that costs $10 a month, that's, I'm not going to be I'm nowhere going to be near, I'm going to exhaust through all of those, the potential customers very, very quickly. So you need to just make sure that you know all the assumptions, that you factor in that, whether or not your market is niche into that. You need to understand or at least have assumptions around how much it's going to cost you to acquire that customer, and then how long that person's going to stay. You need to know and map out all of your fixed and variable costs as well. And if, for example, in this instance, I just put out, I mapped out a very small funnel here, I realized that, if I'm going to spend $1,000 on bringing customers in every month, I'm going to be making $200. That doesn't make any sense. So think about that really, really from the outset. And then, as I said before, feeding into the experiment that you're going to do, whether that's with a lead magnet or a very simple product, but create and test simple initial funnel with those success benchmarks included. So actually map out, just create a very simple product, create a simple funnel, and then just test that you're able to get people to do what you need across that funnel. So you've mapped out the assumptions, now you put it out to the market, get the data. And the beauty of being able to do that, especially when you do go to, like, let's say cold audiences, so audiences that are online, but maybe you're buying off of a platform like LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram or whatever, is that it's a pure experiment. These people probably don't know who you are. You're able to see at each stage where it falls down. And that is priceless in the beginning, because it will help you to understand it and help you to optimize, which I'll come to later, all of those steps along the way. Okay. So, and really to wrap up on this, like going to market, is that you just have to remember that you're a scientist, right? I think we all, there are all these glorified titles that are out there. I'm a CEO, I'm a CMO, I'm a CTO. Really, like, you're not really an entrepreneur until you've been able to get a little bit further down your business, right? So you need to just make sure that you remember you're a scientist, you're testing a hypothesis, that the problem that you're trying to solve has the potential to become a business. And I think when you frame it like that, you stay within that mode of, I'm a scientist, I'm measuring everything, and I'm making sure that all of these assumptions, even the tiniest assumptions, come good. So yeah, and again, going back into the point I made at the beginning, which is that when you focus on the problem and not the solution, you open up to an array of possible solutions and potential solutions. I've made the mistake so many times of being really fixed and excited by my solution instead of really fixed and excited by the problem. So and this is, again, not just myself, not just other people out there, we get so fixed on building rockets when really what our customers wanted was a bicycle, right? And would have, instead of costing us millions, would cost us a fraction of that, like 100 quid. So if you just focus on that, it also will help you to expand into other markets as well. It will help you to expand your array of solutions for that audience, and it will help you to acquire the audience as opposed to acquire people for a very fixed solution. Cool. So I've talked just primarily about people who are basically on that journey to launching, just the key kind of steps that I've seen, that I've come across, when I've interviewed people, when I've supported people, those key steps that I think will help you to really launch your product and hopefully be successful with that. I'm now going to go into the second part, which is for people that have already launched and have already got data, potentially already got customers, and are now looking to optimize and grow. So these are the I guess the key steps that I see people taking, or things that people are definitely looking at when it comes to how can I extract more revenue, how can I grow, that kind of thing. So unit economics, again, a really big one. I was talking to, so I'm in an accountability group, and there was a guy that was kind of like a mastermind accountability group. And there's a guy in my group who's making really good money. He's, you know, he realizes that his business is seasonal, but he hasn't really he's not getting into the brunt and into really looking at his data. He's been fortunate in that he's built something that people want, and he's still got customers coming, even though I think for him, he sees ChatGPT as a bit of a threat to his business. But he's not under the hood of his business in the way that he really should be, to make sure that he could grow it. And the first thing is the unit economics. It's really important to really get under the hood of what, if you're building, if you've got a business that is all about items sold, understanding what that contribution margin is of each item that is being sold. Or if you've got more of a scalable business, a SaaS business where you are acquiring customers, understanding, you know, the lifetime value to CAC ratio. So actually, understanding, you know, how much, so based on like what you acquire your user for, what's the ratio that those users are providing back to the business through revenue. And what you want, if you've got a business that is giving you a greater than 1-to-1 ratio between the amount, the lifetime value, so the full, you know, the average amount that a person is giving you over the lifetime of them being with you versus the amount that you acquire, then, you know, these are things that you really need to understand and really, really need to know. So like I said, I just please get under the hood of that, because without that, you just don't know, you really don't understand what your business is and where it is at. Second of all, which goes without saying, we talk about cash flow a lot, like just knowing and sorry, just going back to unit economics, this is all about gathering data. So these first three items are all more about the data side, right? So cash flow, again, understand your cash flow, understand how long you've got in the business. So by doing that, building out, maybe if you're at the very early stages, building out 12 to 18 month cash flow, or just reforecasting every month, is super important to understand how long you've got left. And I think that is super important, whether or not you need to go out and get a loan, whether or not you need to go and seek out some other funding. It's super important to know and establish this. So again, goes without saying, you need to know how much runway you've got essentially left. The third one, which I touched on in the going to market steps, is just, again, mapping your funnel. Again, going back to people that, I mean, I know so many founders that have got money coming in, but they don't know the journey. And there is so much value in optimizing that journey, which I'm going to come to later on. So that make sure that you're mapping that out. Something as simple and as light as a copy tweak can increase conversions tenfold. So just make sure that you have that all mapped out. You know what the conversions are at each step. So essentially, like what your funnel looks like, all the way from people landing on your site across each step that you're trying to push them through, that you're trying to funnel them through, all the way to being a customer. I think it's something like the average cart value is 15. The average number of people that go from landing on your site to going to cart to order something, let's say on a Shopify or e-commerce, is 15%. If you were to increase that just by a few little tweaks, understanding what's going on, you'll probably, you know, increase the margin, your margins, or increase your revenue at least by not, you know, no small number. So it's really important that you get under the hood of that. So just going back to this point. So there are lots of tools out there. There are things like Funalytics. There are things like, I think it's GetView that I use here. Really, really cool. Really good to help you in the early stages of doing the economics, but also once you've got it, to understanding that. So just make sure that you've got that noted down. Make sure that you use it as well to increase your audience sizes, etc., etc. One thing I was going to mention here is I've got it later on. we use a tool. Oh, what's it called? It's like it's called. Let me just find it. I use a tool that basically helps you to, Hotjar. I don't know if people have heard of Hotjar. Hotjar is a really good tool that you can embed on your landing pages and on your website that allows you to see what people are doing on your site. So in the early days, or if you're mapping this out for the first time and you've got a business that's making money, it's really interesting to understand where people stop on your site. Sometimes it could be even like a simple thing that throws people off. Maybe there's like the testimonials aren't strong enough. They're coming down your site. They're buying into all of the various different sections of your site, and maybe your testimonials or something that you've got there is throwing people off. I really advise people to get that locked in, because the earlier that you understand this stuff, the quicker. And what it does is it videos the calls. Obviously, it's obfuscating people's data. It doesn't show you data, but it shows you where they are, gives you heat maps and that kind of thing. So a really good tip for this one. Fourth step is around, so this is around the experimental phase. So once you have all of the data, you've got the data around what the journey looks like, what all the different conversion rates are at each stage. The important point here is to optimize and maximize the funnel and journey. And you do this through experimenting, right? And the two areas that you can do here, again, things like Hotjar, placing those at different points, different pages within your journey, understanding all of the conversions, and then just making little tweaks at different points and seeing if that does anything to increase. So if you see here that actually from checkout to purchase, there's only 2.5% are there, and you know that the average cart at a cart is 15%, then you know that there's something that's not going on right there that you need to do to fix that. It might be that people are errors. Maybe there's some errors there. Maybe, again, the path isn't optimal. Maybe there's too many steps and it's throwing people off. That is a really good point in which to, increase that and look at ways in which you can increase that. I think there are certain tools that also make that one click, or certain tools that will send an email to people. So if people have added to cart, there are some tools, I think it's, can't remember which one it is. I'll try and remember. There's a tool or a particular product that you can use for landing pages. I think it's ClickFunnels, whereby when people get to that add to cart, it will, I think in Shopify you can do this as well. It will straight away, if somebody hasn't checked out within that 10 minutes or whatever time frame it is, it will send them an email to tell them and remind them that, hey, you did this. Because it could be as simple as, do you know what, somebody's come there, they've forgotten their card details. You've no idea why people are not fulfilling specific steps. But actually, if you start to just play around with that and just add in those additional points to remind people and things like that, it may just increase the value at that point and increase the conversion rates. The other side of that is things like the value ladder. So adding in additional products at different points, adding in upsells, adding in downsells, adding in, again, additional products of different values to actually increase that. So again, going back to the product that we were talking about with, so I had Mindful Team as my sort of platform that was hoping to get people into. What we ended up doing was creating this lead magnet, which was a downloadable version of the game. Then people would go on to buy the game. We added additional versions of the game. And that was to, again, increase the add to cart, but to actually help us bring in some additional revenue that, again, covered marketing costs. And it eventually ended up resulting in us more than breaking even on our marketing spend, so that for every pound spent, we were maybe making £1.50 or something like that. And that would, again, go towards, it meant that, as we were acquiring users, even though our final product wasn't maybe going to plan, we weren't spending loads of money. So I think that is, again, another thing that, and again, when you focus on the problem and not the solution as such, you start to think about other creative ways of bringing in additional revenue and that kind of thing. So again, another important tip and a step that I see a lot of people doing. The fifth point is really around process automation. So again, this is experiment action. So this is around, okay, once you've realized that there's a particular flow that's really working well, how can you look at ways that you can automate that flow? So how can you make it easier for people to do that without maybe a person being involved? So I'm a big automation advocate. And I'm a big advocate of concierging your experiments and not trying to make them all perfect and, doing all of the, sometimes, it might involve you, maybe it involves somebody manually going in and doing something. But once you've realized that that is a process that works, just write it down as a series of steps. You don't have to go overboard, but solidify those steps by automating them. There's loads of tools out there, things from Airtable, Zapier, all of these types of things. Don't necessarily do it all from the outset. Do it only invest in those tools once you realize that is a process that is going to provide value and is going to provide you with additional revenue. So again, I think that's goes without saying that you need to automate once you've solidified that. And then the fifth one, which is one that I see a lot more people who are a lot further on really honing in on. So I've got, after I sold my business Bunny Bounce, I spent a bit of time in Thailand and traveling, and I spent quite a bit of time in the digital nomad community out there in Chiang Mai. And this was partly because one of my best friends was actually, and still does, live out there. And one of the key things I see, and this is probably the big, I would say the big difference between people who've got profitable businesses but are just sort of like just reinvesting that money in and maybe not going anywhere with it, and those people that are actually making money from their businesses. And it's the ability to be really flexible and take the profit first. So there's a great book by Michael Witz, called Profit First. It's a great book that helps you to realize that, and this is a problem that I've had in the past as well, whereby you're making money, you're making these sales, but if you're not underneath the hood of the margins, you're not underneath the unit economics, you're not really underneath the hood of the finance side of it, what can happen is that you end up not realizing if you're making a profit and actually not realizing that profit early enough. You spend all of your time reinvesting and all of your money being put into the business. And then you end up with a business that is just running on its own and is not under control, basically. So this is a really good tip called, Profit First, where he basically talks about when you have money coming in, allocating that money into different pockets. So one pocket might be the profit. So every month when you realize all of the revenue that comes in, you allocate a small amount of profit to the founder profit, you allocate a small amount to the operations of the business, and you allocate the rest to taxes and other elements. And what you'll find is that rather than waiting for the end of the year, you are building up your profit. And then what you're doing is you are being really flexible with the operations of the business. And when you do that on a month-by-month basis, what you find is that it's the art of bootstrapping, but you end up doing less, doing more with less. And you end up actually looking at everything that you utilize in that business as a more flexible thing. Actually, do I need not Canva, but do I need this subscription that maybe isn't actually providing me value, which maybe you've already paid a year up front? Actually, is it something that I need? Is it providing value? And you scrutinize every single transaction in your business and make sure that on a monthly basis, you are, like I say, allocating things into the right pockets. So it's a book that somebody gives an example of how they had a cash eater business and then transformed it into a cash maker business. So again, this is an analogy of Frankenstein, and then it's definitely, like I said, something that I've realized over time with one of my businesses, that you can let that business just go on and have a life of its own without really having full control over it. So yeah, hopefully a very important one that will help some of you guys as well as you go to grow your businesses. And then the final point that I've got here is just about how you expand into new you find new customers and how you expand into new markets. And again, this is another experimental one that you need to really seize upon. But it's really about, rather than, so that normally, and I'm guessing, especially when you are bootstrapped, you're almost like forced to actually niche down and to treat the area of your business as a niche. You don't necessarily, advertise to everybody that you think, to all women in America, or you normally like create different demographics and different avatars or different customer avatars. And so what you need, and then you'll focus potentially on that avatar until you probably maybe exhaust it and start to kind of like expand and build. And I think the important point here is that as you start to look at different audiences and you start to look at different customers and markets, it's really about treating it in the same way that you do at the beginning of your business, at the beginning of your journey. So really starting to niche down, build out those customer avatars, have individualized journeys for all of those different avatars. So you might have different landing pages with different copy that brings people into a funnel. So a great example of this is you might have your main website. So let's take the retrospective game, which is the game that I was talking about before. We have a Shopify website. It's a standard website with standard sort of like almost mainstream copy for anybody that might decide to go on there. But all of our different journeys, we might have a Facebook avatar, particular avatar, or people that we pull through from Facebook. Maybe it's women from London who are Scrum Masters. That particular avatar will have very, very different copy to the other avatar, which might be, I don't know, people from women from Yorkshire, for example. And that allows us to make sure that we really hone in and streamline that full journey to that user. And I think that's the same thing that I see on the people that are really killing it. They really know how to niche down and treat every market like a new product and start again and have specific journeys for those people with different copy, with different that is really being optimized and optimized for that particular avatar. So I think that the same is true here. Really niche down, really understand. Don't have too many people that you're advertising to until you probably expand out, but actually just start to have lots of different audiences that go down different funnels and keep it like that. That's a really important one as well, and one that hopefully will support you in expanding out. Now I realize that I'm coming to, I've probably spoken for a lot longer than I should have, but I've got a list of various different tips here just for people to really ask themselves and to really look at. So one, have you asked yourself the important questions? I think it's really important for you to understand what your long-term ambitions are, what type of business you want to build, what your priorities in life are, understand yourself, understand your skill set, understand, I realize that I'm more of a creative founder as opposed to a conscientious one. So I normally have to work with somebody who's going to help me execute on things just because of the way that my brain works. So just very quickly, there are tools that you can do to help you understand all of these aspects of yourself. So things like Understand Me. And again, I'll send this to the team at the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center to send out to all of you as well. Measure everything. Like, I can't stress this one enough. You like, I've talked about Hotjar before, but you just need to not assume that you build a website, people are going to come, you build out this fancy journey and people are going to, normally a landing page has like 2 buttons on it. There's no menu and it's very, very, it's built to have people go down it, flow down it and only click that one button. So really measure everything and capture assumptions and conversion metrics and things from out there on the internet. The internet's your friend when it comes to that. 5 core qualities of successful bootstrap businesses. So again, this is just part of the book that I had, but just things that I found that are very really core qualities: being process driven, being resourceful, being creative, being able to solve problems and think out of the side of the box, very experimental, obviously resilient and very open and flexible. And that change, knowing that change is the only constant in the early days of the business and just accepting that. And then the another tip that I was going to say is like, think like an investor, evaluate your business the way an investor would. And I know that's hard because we're not investors, but a way to do that is through evaluating different risks. And I've got a tool here that you can use called the idea audit that you can use to do that. Again, I'll send this to the NASDAQ team to look at. And apologies, I've run slightly over what I wanted to. But if you've got any questions, now's the time to, put them over, send them over to me.
Awesome, Emma. Thank you so much. The detail was incredible. This was just such an amazing session. I think we have time for maybe one question, and there's a really good one that I wanted to quickly touch on. So this person's saying they prefer to bootstrap through their own funds because they don't want to give equity to investors who may steer them from their vision. So how does bootstrapping kind of impact a business in the long run if you're going to kind of hold on to that equity, especially when it comes to like pricing your offering competitively?
Yeah, so just to say that I probably should have said this story at the beginning, but I completely resonate with that. When we went down the Buddy Bounce route, one of the things that really we were not ready, and I think that is, we were not ready to, I say we weren't ready, we didn't know enough, I think, and we took that money maybe a little bit too early. And what that meant was that we're always almost like running the business for someone else rather than for ourselves, and obviously being driven by what the investors are saying. And so in the early days of Buddy Bounce, just one thing to say is that we were B2B2C. So we were like a loyalty platform for fans and musicians. We had the artists and the management teams and record labels as one of our clients, or ones that were paying us, and brands. And we had like the end users, we had a platform that was aimed at them. And what we found was that in our early days, we were all about let's increase the numbers. And we did so well on a very tight budget, getting to 80,000 users by just doing really simple or growth hacky kind of things. And then when we got the investors on board, they were all about make money. And I think actually if we'd gone longer, because our platform harnessed lots of data from these. So we were almost like an analytics platform. We had hundreds of millions of data on the people that were on our platform. So when it comes to bootstrapping, what I would say, I think there's almost like the line between whether or not a business is a bootstrap business and can viably be run as one. So for example, knowing yourself, knowing what's required of you is really important to know. Like maybe if you're a deep tech business, it probably makes sense to raise investment because you're going to have to reinvest in that product. You're going to have to invest heavily in product development. But if you're a Shopify store or a very light touch kind of product, then it makes sense to, and actually investor won't want to touch you until they see data, right? So they see the ability for you to have customers and that you're further on anyway. So actually for you, just I think I'm answering the question correctly.
Yeah.
It makes sense for you to get more data and to go a little bit further on, because further down the line, really you want to be in a position to scale that with investment, right? And actually that's where an investor would want you to be as well, to a point where you do step fairly enough. When I say that, I mean maybe 3 months worth of data. Like if you're going up and the trajectory is high, then go seek out that investment, because it looks like you're onto something. There's that point when you've got product market fit. But I think it's important to know who you are, what you want, what your ambitions are. It isn't a very easy question to answer. What your ambitions are, how much how much you want to grow the business. If your ambitions are to be a unicorn, you need to raise. If your ambition isn't to, then, and you want to have that freedom, then it makes complete sense to bootstrap. So hopefully I've answered that question.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful. Thank you. We are just out of time, but if you, Emma, had one piece of wisdom or something from this conversation that you wanted to leave with the audience, what would that be?
I think there's so many. One, experiment. Treat everything like a science experiment. Every last detail, excuse me, every last detail to copy on your site, to just really have that whole journey mapped out. And people are, I think most people don't realize that, the biggest, sometimes the biggest way to increase the value or returns of your business is just by optimizing the funnel, mapping it out and looking at where the leaks are and just plugging those leaks. So, yeah.
Love it. Emma, thank you so much for your time, for your insights. This was such an incredible session on behalf of the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center and everyone here today. We are just so grateful that you joined us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. My pleasure.
Awesome. And to our audience, we would love for you to join us again for upcoming webinars, which you can view by using the link that's going to be posted in the chat. And thank you all so much for joining us today. We look forward to welcoming you back online with us soon.